My name is Chaz Andres. If you know me, it's probably because of my work over on Star City Games. I've been writing a weekly finance column for them since early 2012. And don't worry, that hasn't changed. I'll still be there every Monday morning. But on Star City, my focus is entirely on the paper side of the game. On this channel, my goal is to do weekly updates on the Magic Online marketplace. Online movers, shakers, winners, losers, you know the drill. Heath Newton of MTGO Traders, owner of my local game store here in Wilmington, North Carolina, thought you'd enjoy this sort of content. If you do, don't forget to like and subscribe so that I can keep bringing you the latest finance news from Magic Online. And don't forget to get your digital cards from MTGO Traders. Before we begin, let me just state up front, this is my first real attempt at doing video content. I'm a writer at heart, so some of the more performative elements are gonna need some time to improve. I'll figure out some weekly segments, inject a little comedy into the proceedings, and hopefully I'll figure out how to give a little off script. More than I am now. Not that I'm reading words off of a screen. As always, I welcome your critiques and your suggestions in the comments. Unless you're a troll, then kindly shut up. Anyway, moving on to Magic. Let's start with Standard, where Temur Aetherworks is still the undisputed king of the metagame. Blue-Red Control and Mardu Vehicles are the Tier 2 lists, but they don't even have a quarter of the metagame between them, which is really weak for a second tier. Zombies, Temur Energy, and Green-Black Energy are firmly ensconced in the third tier, at least until WotC bans Aetherworks, or someone comes up with a fair way to actually beat the dang thing consistently. As a result, there was not a lot of upward movement in Standard this week. Chandra Torch of Defiance is up about 4 tickets, Tireless Tracker is up 2.5, and a few other cards saw gains between 1 and 2 tickets each. We're talking Gideon Ally of Zendikar, Spell Queller, Walking Ballista, Botanical Sanctum, Hissing Quagmire, and Fatal Push. Other than a small pivot possibly toward Mardu Vehicles, as evidenced by Chandra and Gideon, these feel more like fluctuations to me than actual trends. And really, I think we're all in something of a holding pattern until we see what happens to the format next. The biggest loser of the week by far in Standard was Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger. It was down a whopping 8 tickets, despite being in the format's consensus best deck. If you look at the trends, you can see that the card has actually been seesawing between 20 and 30 tickets since the start of May, so it's possible that we're just on another brief downswing. I don't think it's actually likely though. The problem is, the future of Temur Aetherworks is still very uncertain. WotC could ban the deck, WotC could keep it alive and nothing comes along to save the format and make it actually playable, in which case it exists as the only deck in a format that nobody really wants to play. Or somebody could come along and create a Temur Aetherworks killer that allows it to be just sort of one deck among many decent choices in the format. The problem with investing in Ulamog right now is that if either of the first two things come to pass, the card is going to keep going down. It's only in that third case where Aetherworks ends up as one healthy deck among many that you want to buy in on Ulamog right now. So even though it's on the downswing, personally, I'm selling. Standard may have had kind of a poor week, but Modern is booming right now. The two Death Shadow variants, Grixis Shadow and Death Shadow Aggro, were up big, and all of their staples are doing really well right now. Collective Brutality was actually the highest gaining Standard staple of the week, even though it's mostly played in Modern in these two Death Shadow decks, and that card was up 7 tickets. Kolaghan's Command was up 6, Death Shadow itself, Scalding Tarn, and Liliana of the Veil were all up 5, Surgical Extraction was up 3, and Thoughtseize and Street Wraith were each up 2. Snapcaster Mage, which is only in the Grixis version of the deck, that was still enough to give the card almost a 5-ticket gain. And a few other Modern gainers, sort of random ones, Mox Opal, Leyline of the Void, and Nettle Sentinel were all up between 1 and 2 tickets this week. On the other side of the spectrum, Cord & Company decks lost a little bit of value. Voice of Resurgence is down 3, Kataki War's Wage is down 2, and so is Archangel of Thune. Blood Moon is also dipping a little bit, but that's a slower long-term trend. Quite frankly, I'm not concerned about any of those cards. One of the more interesting cards right now is Predict, which is an uncommon from Odyssey. And it's shooting up in price as people look for top replacements in Legacy Miracles. Personally, I'm not sold. I think it's a little inconsistent. and I would sell into the hype. But if you are a believer, this is a card with a price chart that sort of looks like a straight line pointing up, and you aren't going to have much time to buy them because the supply is very, very low. It wasn't printed in any other sets. So if you are a believer, get it now. If not, you should probably sell into hype. Personally, I would rather go in on Misdirection, which was also about 5 tickets this week. Misdirection in Paper Magic was reprinted in Conspiracy, but in online, it still has a very, very, very low supply. I think it could still gain a little bit more, and I would buy them now if I needed them. Same is true with Wasteland, Gemstone Mine, and Mox Diamond. Their charts are a little bit slower, but they still seem to be trending up, and each of them gained a few tickets this week. Meanwhile, Rishadan Port and Food Chain were sort of the 2 minor lot losers this week. They did not lose much, but they are down a little from where they were at this point last week. Another card worth talking about this week is Treachery from Urza's block. A few weeks ago, it was only a 2-ticket rare, and it was not really interesting aside from being fairly scarce. But these days, it's actually up to 12 tickets, and it continues to climb. It gained another 3 tickets this week. And I think it has something to do with the dual commander format that Wizards of the Coast has been pushing lately, because I can't find a competitive deck anywhere that runs the card. This is interesting because if Dual Commander actually does take off, there are loads more specs we can talk about in this space in the coming weeks as we look to see what cards might pop off next. But for now, I've remained a little skeptical that Treachery is going to hold its price. Casual cards historically have not done very well online, so this would sort of buck that trend a little bit. A card that I do want to talk a little bit more about is Soulscar Mage. Soulscar Mage jumped from bulk to just under a ticket last week. And I think that is because it started to see play in some legacy variants of Delver. And this is a card, it's from a current set, but red 1-drops with prowess, where have we seen that before? Without seeing any standard play, and it really hasn't, I can't be too bullish on it. But cheap, aggressive red spells do really, really well online, and this has shown game in formats as far back as Legacy. If you can find copies for under a ticket still, I'd grab a set and just hold on to them for a little while. You might be happy you had them at some point. That's all I've got this week. Join me next time on my, I guess, Magic Online Market Roundup? We will shop that name around and see what I come up with. But see you next week. Thanks.